Hey guys, thank you so much for clicking on today's video. My name is Annalise and I make houseplant videos here on my channel, Get Planty With It. So today we're going to be talking about one of my absolute favorite plants, the Philodendron Micans. Here is my baby. If you do not have one yet, definitely add it to your plucket list or plant bucket list. I call it a plucket list. Definitely add it to your plucket list because look how beautiful these leaves are. I'll bring her close. They come in all these different colors, different shades of reds and browns and green, and they're super velvety. And it's a beautiful trailing plant. I mean, what more could you want in a plant, right? So Micans actually became pretty hard to get during the middle of the quarantine. I think they grew in popularity and there just wasn't a huge supply of them. And so they got pretty expensive. I don't remember exactly how much I pay. If I can find it, I'll put it on the screen. But I started out with one single strand of about 5 leaves. It was super leggy and awkward. So as soon as I got it, I cut it all up because I knew I wanted a full pot. So as you can see, I'm part of the way there, pretty full on top. We have some trailing vines here on the sides, but I'm hoping that one day it'll grow into an even fuller, really beautiful pot and probably become a hanging basket somewhere in my home. So today I want to talk about how do I care for this plant, how do I make it fuller, what kind of light does it need, watering, humidity, all of those things, all of the conditions that will make this plant a success. So if you want to learn about how to care for your Philodendron Micans, definitely stay tuned. So first up, I want to talk about the soil that I use. All of my philodendron are pretty much in the same soil. I use a really chunky area mix. Soon I'm going to be putting out a video on exactly how I mix my soil, but just for the basics, in my soil, you can kind of see it here. I have a lot of orchid bark to keep things chunky. There's perlite in there, there's charcoal, and a couple other ingredients that keep it really airy. Now the reason that that's important is because when a plant does not have airy soil and has a really dense soil, it'll hold in moisture. And when plants, certain plants, especially philodendron, are sitting in moisture and their roots are constantly surrounded by moisture, they're gonna start to rot. And you really don't want that with any of your plants. So definitely make sure you have a chunky airy mix. Don't go get the typical potting soil from the store. I know when I started my plant journey, I thought I could just buy a huge bag of Miracle-Gro potting mix and throw all my plants in there, and I had a lot of issues with rot. So you wanna make sure you're adding different things into your soil to make it chunkier. Okay, second, I'm gonna talk about the lighting conditions that I keep this plant in. I actually keep this plant right on my desk, which is back here next to me. I can show it a picture of where it usually sits. So it's about maybe 7 feet back from a east-facing window. So really not the most light, but it seems to really be doing well there. As you can see, it's shooting out a ton of new growth. I have a bunch of growth points. There's one, here's one. You know, there's a bunch. So it seems to be doing well there. Of course, if you do give these higher light, they're gonna grow even faster and bigger leaves, but they do seem to do decent in not the brightest of light. I, again, wouldn't put it in super low light. I don't think it'll grow very well in super low light. You get very small leaves and it probably would grow pretty slowly, but if you have kind of indirect or moderate light, I think this plant will do great. So third is humidity. Now I know humidity is always a complicated one because some people don't have humidifiers in their home, some people do. It really depends on where you live in the world. Some states or other countries are a lot more humid at baseline. I live in New York City. We don't have super high humidity. I think in my living room right now is actually at 56, which is decently high. I think it's because it's kind of like it feels like it's gonna rain, so I think there's extra moisture in the air, but usually my living room's sitting at like high 30s, low 40s in humidity, and that's the room that this plant is in and does completely fine. So some plants, as you know, like a melanochrysum, which does look kind of similar, another velvet leaf plant, or a varicosum, they really do need that higher humidity to make sure that their leaves make it out of the sheath successfully. But the Micans, for me at least, seems to do completely fine in an average room humidity. So another great plant, I think that's really great for beginners, because I know starting out a lot of people, aren't ready to invest in humidifiers and put in that extra effort to keep the humidity high in a room. And so the Micans is great because it doesn't need that. Also, it's a great plant for some places in your house that may not have ideal conditions. I know in my plant room, the conditions are pretty ideal. I have grow lights everywhere, humidifiers, but I want plants to live in the rest of my house where I don't have those super ideal conditions. And so this is a super beautiful option for some of the rooms that aren't as ideal in condition, but still have some level of light, and they will clearly thrive. So the next category is how do I fertilize my Micans? I fertilize pretty much all of my plants living in the soil the same way. Yeah, I use Liquider, which is a great fertilizer. I'll include an image of the packaging so you can see what it looks like. And basically it comes in a really concentrated pouch and you dilute it a few times until it's diluted to a certain level in water. and then you water your plants regularly. So I like to, in the spring, summer, early fall, I like to fertilize my plants with every watering. They're actively growing, so I really like to fertilize then. In the winter, if the plant is still actively growing, I'll fertilize it, but probably maybe every second watering, every third watering, just so it doesn't get fertilizer burn. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Basically, when it's ready to water, I just will get the fertilizer water, my liquid earth water, and soak the entire thing, let it drain out over the sink, and then I'm done. So that leads me to the next category about this plant, which is how to water it. So like a lot of philodendron, it's pretty vocal about when it needs water, which is another reason I think it's a great beginner plant. For beginners, it's super helpful to be able to know what your plants need when you need them. Some plants are really unclear about what they need. Their leaves will curl, but it doesn't mean water, it means humidity, it means the soil's wrong, something like that. But these are pretty clear. When they need water, you can see the branches will start to droop. I did just water this yesterday, so it's not really drooping right now. And the leaves will start to curl up a bit. It'll look pretty different. If you do pay attention to your plants pretty closely, you'll be able to tell that there is a difference. And so once you start noticing those symptoms on numerous leaves, I would give it a nice thorough soak. I like to water my plants super thoroughly every time I water them, but I wait until they signal to me that they're super dry so they don't get root rot. So they're super dry, I bring them to the sink, I pour my fertilizer water all over them, I let them drain out the bottom, and then they're all set probably for at least another week or two. This one I probably do every week and a half or so with watering, but I don't recommend sticking to a watering schedule. Definitely get to know your plants, feel their soil, read their signs. The watering schedule is going to be different for everybody and every plant, so you don't want to stick to something too concrete, or don't take my advice super literally and start watering exactly every week and a half. So the final category, which is my favorite, is how to propagate. So I know when I got my micans, big full baskets were not readily available or they were super expensive. So I did have to start out with a smaller kind of starter plant. Now I think they're more readily available and you can get baskets of micans for like $30 at a nursery, which is amazing. But if you want to start small and grow your plant big, it's very, very easy to propagate. So I'm going to show you the two propagations I have going right now. They were actually accidental propagations. When I was repotting this guy a few weeks ago, I knocked off a whole vine, and so I ended up just cutting it up into two different propagations, and now when they're ready, I'm going to put them back in the pot and make it a little bit fuller. Okay, so here they are. They're living in this recycled, I think, olive oil glass vessel, but it's super cute. And basically, you want to make sure that any cutting you take has a node. So this is the node right there, you can see, and there's little nubs coming out of the node, and that's the beginning of roots starting to form. This has only been in there for a few days, so there's not a lot of root growth yet, but these are usually really easy to propagate. You don't have to do much, they will grow. I just use plain tap water, I don't put anything in my water, and I just leave it. You can see also, actually, it's shooting out some new leaves, even though it doesn't have roots, so that's always fun. Yeah, it's shooting out 2 new leaves, that's super cool, a little double leaf situation there. And then I have one more cutting from the same vine, which you can see has a tiny little baby root there. It's shooting out some more, and then some new growth there. So once these are ready, I'll just repot them back in this exact same pot, and they'll start new branches. So when cutting, what you basically want to look for is a node on your plant. So let's take this vine here. As you can see, actually it might be hard to see, let me turn it around. So in between each of the leaves, where the leaf connects with the main stem, you can see they all have these little nodes, which are these little lines with the nubs on them. So when you cut, you want to cut about 1 inch or so below the node, and make sure that the node is then submerged in water when you water propagate. You of course can propagate in spag or perlite or leca or whatever people like to propagate in. I feel like micans and a lot of trailing philodendron are super easy at propagating, but just make sure that you have the node when you make the cut, and make sure that that node is submerged in whatever medium you choose. Okay, so I think that's pretty much it for how I care for my micans. She's doing so well. I'm so proud of how much she's grown. I wish I had a picture of when I first got the plant, but I don't, sadly. I don't think I took one, but I promise it was a really small plant. It was probably the size of like this one vine here. So I'm really proud of how well it's been doing. If you guys have any tips and tricks for your micans, definitely leave them in the comments below. I also want to start creating a series where I talk about how I care for different plants that I have in my collection. So if there's any plants that you know I have or have you seen, please leave a comment down below and I can make a care tips video on them. I think that's pretty much it for today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and sticking around to the end of the video if you did. Have a wonderful day, everybody.